Oh, seem to be live now. Just let me know if you can hear me so I don't start talking and everyone's wondering what I'm talking about. Just a quick confirmation. Yes, good. Right, well, welcome to this long-planned live stream. This is only the second public one that I've made. I had like a random one a couple of months ago, I think, that honestly, it was just spur of the moment. I didn't even advertise it. I just decided to go for it. And that one's not been made public or anything. It's just unlisted. But I've long wanted to make one about adaptations because it's something that those who watch the channel know that I very, very rarely ever bring them up in any of the videos. And there's reasons for that. It's not about hating adaptations or anything like that. But I hope we can get into that today. But it's about time kind of talk to people who like the channel. It's the perfect time with the new show coming out where people can just ask absolutely anything they want about any adaptation, even adaptations that haven't been made yet. And you know, this is the opportunity to do it. And before we really get into that, I just want to say that for some reason, adaptations are the most controversial of Tolkien topics. And I don't really know why, but things can get very, very heated for some reason, as we've seen over the last year with the new show and all that. So before I start, I don't want to seem like the YouTube police, but there are some mods in the chat, and I'd really love it if they didn't have to do anything tonight, And debate's fine, disagreements are fine. You can argue, you can debate, but let's kind of keep it clean. And I don't really want anyone having to leave the stream because they're being attacked or something like that. It's only adaptations, so let's not go mental. And yep, as I said, this is only adaptations, so I'm not going to answer anything about just Tolkien's works unless it ties in with adaptations. And as I said, you can ask absolutely anything you want as long as it's asked in a good way. And I also don't have to answer questions I don't want to answer, but I'm pretty open. There's no questions that I'll really shy away from or anything like that. So yeah, I don't know how long it'll last. We'll just see until the comments dry up or I fall asleep. But you'll basically shape this stream, and you can leave questions, leave your comments, and I'll just start working my way through them. And if I've not reached you yet, I'm going to be a bit behind. Don't spam the question over and over. I'll honestly get to your question if I want to answer it. So thanks again, everyone, for showing up. And I'm just going to start from the top, basically. So hello to everyone who said hello already. A lot of familiar faces. So Ludwig, hello to you again. Do I see any value in adaptations? Of course, yeah. I think you have to be a bit blind to think that adaptations haven't actually helped draw people into Tolkien. That's the evidence is clear. I think when the Peter Jackson movies come out, well, a few years after it, they were saying something like, I might be wrong here, I'm not an expert on book sales or anything like that, but I think they said something like a third or something of Lord of the Rings copies were sold after those movies were made. And yeah, a lot of people won't be reading them, but you'll get a lot who do read them. And then from that bunch, you'll get people who are really, really drawn into Tolkien. And there'll be plenty of other Tolkien channels, for example, that would not be doing this if they didn't watch an adaptation first. And I'm not a gatekeeper, I'm not an elitist. If you got into Tolkien through Peter Jackson's movies, that's no different from someone who got into it when it was first published, if they're still around. So there's value in discussing them. There's value in bringing Tolkien's works to a bigger audience. But I also think that some people value them too much. They maybe obsess about them and care about them so much that it's started to affect how they actually view the source itself. And we could probably get into that as we go forward. Bandman. Which video game adaptations have you played and how do you feel about them? I've played all the big ones, I think, except I've not played online, Lord of the Rings Online. I don't play MMOs or anything like that. I've played all the ones that you'll know about, like Battle for Middle-earth, the Two Towers, Return of the King games. Remember them from PlayStation 2 days. I think it was PlayStation 2. I loved those. That's when you could go like Gandalf and spam your staff and all that. That was great. I've played the Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War games, which I really, really like. I really like open world games where you can level up and get 100%, collecting everything and spending so much time in it. But even though I love the games, I can completely separate them from Tolkien. The stories in those games are absolutely ridiculous, and they're so over the top, and they're nothing really to do with Tolkien. But it doesn't stop them being good games, and that's probably going to be a running theme throughout this whole stream, where if an adaptation or something that's influenced by Tolkien doesn't really get the Tolkien stuff right, it doesn't mean it can't be enjoyable. So I definitely like those games, despite how bonkers they are when it comes to the Legendarium. But they're fun. So, and I can't think of any others that I've played. If they pop back up, I'll discuss them. Or if you can tell me some I've missed, I might pick up on that. NG. Thoughts on the late animated? I might look old. I'm not that old, though. I didn't grow up with the Bakshi animations. I actually watched them quite a while after the Peter Jackson one, the Peter Jackson early 2000s movies. And if you're talking about the Lord of the Rings one, the one that kind of finishes kind of through the Two Towers, doesn't it? It doesn't. It's not complete. I quite like it, and there's obviously moments that completely inspired the Peter Jackson ones, didn't they? It's like shot for shot in some places. They also make loads of changes, and it's kind of rushed, which it has to be. It's just an animation, isn't it? It's like a short animation. But yeah, I can watch them. I could watch this film anytime, but it's also quite strange. I think it's of its time. I'll say that. You just have to look at the Hobbits. I think some of the design choices are very strange, and it's like this kind of time capsule where you see. It's interesting to see what people at that time would think these characters would look like. I think that's always quite interesting. What is Aragorn about in that animation? I like the performance. I think that's John Hurt, if I'm right there, for Aragorn. He looks so strange, and Elrond and does that whole thing with Saruman where they sometimes call him Aruman, and he's got like the really weird voice and the red robes and all that. It's quite a cheesy film, but I like it. I don't think it's a bad film by any means. And yeah, I've said in other places that Tolkien would work really well with animation. I'd rather see some stories done in an animation rather than live action. I think that allows far greater creativity, and I hope we would get. So I know we're going to get the War of the Rohirrim, but I'd like to see some other animations for sure. Something really adult, like some Berserk style animation, but for Tolkien, I'd love something like that. See that this is the thing with some questions. I might end up talking for about half an hour on them. What do I like the most and hate the most in the Lord of the Rings trilogy? This might seem like a cop out, and I'm not meaning this. I like the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings trilogy, but I really like some of the casting choices and the performances there, where I've said before that some of them are so good that even though I'd read Lord of the Rings before and I've read it loads of times since, I picture the actors, some of these actors, while I'm reading it, which I think is a testament to the films. That's a big compliment to pay them. And the music, definitely the music. I love all these themes that go with certain races and certain characters and these moments where, again, even when I'm reading the books, when they start going into Rohan, for example, I just hear that theme. I absolutely love that theme. And this is one big strength of adaptations. You can't play music when you can't have music coming out the page when you're reading it, but seeing that kind of creativity bring the page to life is something that makes a good adaptation really good. And yeah, I love that. And I also love most of the Fellowship of the Ring. And I'll even say, if you're taking the Lord of the Rings and you're realizing we've got 3 hours to do this, and like the first volume, you've got 3 hours to do it, and we need to cut this out and cut that out, and that's obviously going to happen. For the most part, I think they did a good job with Fellowship of the Ring, especially. I think I'd say not a great adaptation. I've got some complaints in that sense, but I don't want to be too harsh on it. I would go as far as to say Fellowship of the Ring is one of the best films ever made, and there's really great moments in it. I love Gandalf and the Balrog, for example. I love these moments where they're leaving the Shire and they're heading to Bree and all that. Nobody really talks about that. I love that up to Weathertop, and I like the atmosphere and all that. I think it's really good. And I should probably get into some negativity now, though. What I hate the most in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, unnecessary changes. Now, everyone always says, "Oh, you need to do certain things to have it work on screen," and I think that's right in some cases. But there's definitely some changes that I think were just down to the people making it, either thinking, "Oh, this would be better in this way," or this definitely wouldn't work on screen, or a misunderstanding of what Tolkien meant. So, for example, I genuinely think that Peter Jackson and Philippa Boyens I genuinely think that they believe Sauron was a big flaming eyeball, which kind of baffles me a bit that they would think that. Because I remember some interviews and they were talking about that, and I says, do they really think that he was like that? And I thought it was maybe at first just a creative choice, because there's that whole deleted scene where he was going to fight Aragorn at the Black Gate. But some of the stuff they say, I'm like, did you really read the Eye of Sauron literally? And there's some other moments like that where I'm like, you're not kind of thinking about it too much. So character changes, That's a big one. This is probably going to come up during the stream, but I really hate what they did to. I know everyone talks about Denethor and Faramir. I really hate what they did to Frodo. No one really talks about that very much, but that's character assassination. I think he's whiny. He needs help constantly, and he's not the Frodo that I read on the page. I actually like Frodo in The Lord of the Rings, and not saying anything about Elijah Wood. I'm just saying based on the writing, I think he was nothing like the character that Tolkien had written. This kind of bit naive at the beginning, but he's a learned hobbit. He's the best the Shire has to offer, as Gandalf says. Understands other cultures like the elves really well. He's far braver than you see in the films, and we actually miss out on really, really big moments for him, such as in the Barrow with the Barrow Whites. That's a huge moment to miss for Frodo. They also needlessly replaced Glorfindel with Arwen and took away a really heroic moment for Frodo with him standing against the Ringwraiths. That is one of Frodo's greatest moments, and they left it out of the films. I couldn't believe that. That's crazy to me. You need that for if we're calling him the main character. I can't believe they left out something like that, but I'm sure we'll get into that as we go forward. I love the Nightfall Middle-earth album. I actually listened to that before I'd ever read Lord of the Rings, or I know it's the Silmarillion, but I'd heard of Blind Guardian and these albums. I think Nightfall Middle-earth was 98. I kind of get into metal stuff around 2000, and yeah, I really got to grips with what they were singing about when I picked up the Silmarillion, which was a little bit after I finished reading Lord of the Rings. So big fan of it. It's clear that they know their stuff. I think Curse of Feanor is probably my favourite song from the album, and there's so many great songs in that, to be honest. And I'd have loved to have heard. I know they wanted to do Lord of the Rings, and like an actual concept album about it, and they didn't get to do that. I would have loved to have heard them tackle that as well, and maybe some other songs, like maybe songs about Numenor or something like that. But I think it's a great album, and if anyone likes their metal and they like, especially power metal, and they like Tolkien, which I'm assuming you do if you're here, if you've not heard Nightfall Middle-earth yet, then wait till I finish the stream and then go and listen to it. So here's Joshua from Tolkien Lore. Pick one adaptation to exactly how you'd like. A story that hasn't been adapted yet, or one that has that you'd like to do different. That's a big question as well. Okay, I'll give two answers. Actually, no, I'll give three, right? First, I'll say I don't think the Silmarillion can be adapted, as in from Ainur Dalit up until the War of Wrath or the Downfall of Numenor. I don't think that can be adapted. Even I know a lot of people say TV show would work. I don't think it would. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't like stories taken from it to be adapted. I think Turin would be a great story. Again, if we're going to do animation or something, it would be really kind of grim and adult in tone, and that would really work. I would love that if they took it really seriously and told his story. That'd be brilliant. And yeah, if you're saying I would be involved in that, that would be the best thing ever. So I'd pick that. But I'd also just say the Lord of the Rings. I know we have these big Peter Jackson films that everyone loves and all that, but I don't think Middle Earth is just Peter Jackson's vision. This is why I don't like it when everyone complains that, oh, why is Peter Jackson not involved in this? And I'm like, he's not Middle Earth. I like those films and everything, that's great, but I'd love to see other people's vision for Tolkien. And in the future, if someone tackled the Lord of the Rings again, what could be different? I would love it if it was closer to. I don't just mean plot points and all that. I'm saying closer to the feel of Tolkien, all the this amazing atmosphere I get when I read, and the epic scale of the history and all of that. I still think that was missing from the films. It's a huge film, a huge trilogy, but it still feels small compared to Tolkien, in my opinion. So I'd love in the future if the Lord of the Rings would be tackled again. I'd love to see what someone else would imagine for it, because that's, even though I love all the stories of Tolkien, the Lord of the Rings is the biggest one. And I hope that the Peter Jackson ones aren't the last ones we'll ever get, And just before I move on, one of my favorite stories is the downfall of Numenor, and I know that's going to be in the TV show, but I love something just about Numenor, the fall of man and Sauron's influence, and their end and all that. I love that. I'd love to see that adapted on its own. Yeah, plenty of people. I know Christopher Tolkien's a really famous example, but no, you just need to go online and have a little read. There's plenty of people who never want any Tolkien adaptation. They don't think they're possible, or they think they'll all be ruined, and go and read the books and all this. There's loads of people who are really against film adaptations. I'm not against film adaptations, I just don't think they're that important. But I also don't think the Peter Jackson films are perfect or anything like that. Especially as they went on. I really love the films, but I still think Peter Jackson went a bit off the rails the further he got, and we can talk about that. Shepherd of the Forest. Treebeard himself. Do I think there's any way to adapt it to film? No, I honestly don't. It's I know everyone always compares the Silmarillion to the Bible, and it's kind of like that, but it's a bit like you said, go and make a film on the Bible, right? I know people say, what Bible? I'm just saying, just imagine, make that into a film. You can't do that. That's just ridiculous. And the Silmarillion, we have different sections. We have the music of the Ainur, we have the quest, we have the Quenta Silmarillion, we have Akalabeth, we have the Rings of Power in the Third Age, and you have to pick what you're going to do first. But even if you took Quenta Silmarillion, even in that, there's weird jumps to chapters that seem so unrelated to anything else. And you'd have to really, really streamline this. And I think if you start doing that, you're kind of taking away what makes the Silmarillion special. Will someone attempt it eventually? Definitely. I think in my lifetime there'll be Silmarillion TV series or films or something. They're definitely going to do it. I just don't think it's possible. Like, for example, if I told you, what does the War of Wrath look like? I think the War of Wrath is unimaginable in its scale, and anything they put on screen will pale in comparison to what Tolkien was going for. It's cataclysmic end of the world kind of war, and even if they filled the screen up with millions of orcs and all that, I still don't think it would match what's in your head. And that's just one event. There's so much other things to consider, how the elves would look and just the feel of it. I don't think any big budget adaptation of the Silmarillion would do it justice. I think it would become too generic and trying to appeal to as wide an audience as possible, when the Silmarillion is not really about that. It's more people read the Lord of the Rings and others then go on to the Silmarillion. It's not to sound arrogant or anything like that. It's a bit more specialized, isn't it? I think everyone here who's read the Silmarillion knows it's a bit of a more difficult and involved read than Lord of the Rings. I think, anyway. Cryo Boy, you're in Dundee. Hello to you. Well, we see flashback to the first stage of the Rings of Power prologue. See, I don't know, because there's people in this in the chat who have seen these episodes. I don't know if he's still around, but Joshua was there from Tolkien Lore. He put up a review. You can go and watch that on his channel. I don't know if a mod wants to put in Tolkien Lore link, but he'll know this, and I might sound stupid if I say, "Oh yeah, I think so," and I'm completely wrong. I have no idea what they'll show. I originally thought they would. I thought, even though it's all confusing about what are they allowed to show and all this, I thought they would go for some sort of prologue, especially when we saw that first image with the two trees. I thought there was going to be something like that, and this is one of those things I like. And oh yeah, I just saw someone there saying no spoilers. So if anyone has seen it, please don't spoil it in the chat for others who haven't seen it yet. This thing with Morgoth. Morgoth is probably my favorite character in all of Tolkien, as you'll know by the amount of videos I make about him. But it's one of these things where it's like, I kind of like the idea of seeing him on screen, some vision of Morgoth. But then I also think they're not going to do him right. He's not going to be how I imagine him, so I don't want to see him. So I don't know. There's something about not showing Morgoth that kind of makes him scarier, that kind of way. And I just want to thank, should have put this up earlier, but I never ask for super chats or anything like that. I'll never beg for them or anything, but honestly, I really appreciate it if people are donating for the channel. And I meant to put up your super chat earlier. So thanks very much for that. And I have heard of that adaptation. I've read a few articles about it. And that's what's so strange. This attitude towards Tolkien back then, it's so different from now, where, can you imagine, I don't know who the Beatles equivalent are nowadays, if there even is an equivalent, but, let's just say some bands like we're gonna be the Hobbits and the Lord of the Rings adaptation. Everyone's saying, what are you talking about? But back then it's like considered and talked about, and it's a bit like when I talked about the animation, where there's like some strange design choices, but back in the 70s it might have seemed really cool that the hobbits had hair like that, or that Sam looked like the gaffer had dropped him on his head a few times. Or the Balrog looks like a lion butterfly or something like that. It's just cool seeing this different attitude to Tolkien decades ago compared to now. That would never happen now. But who knows if we'd even be talking about this, all this Tolkien stuff on YouTube, if the Beatles had been in an adaptation before. I think that's so kind of crazy. I just need to go back up to the other comments. Sorry. I have indeed. Yep. I like some black metal stuff, usually really atmospheric stuff. Does it very well. And summoning, of course, they are almost everything's Tolkien, isn't it? And unlike the Blind Guardian recommendation, I don't think I think the people who would like summoning in the chat probably already know summoning. But yeah, well aware of summoning, and it's weird because a lot of black metal bands pick Tolkien names and then never write any songs about Tolkien. But a band like Summoning are the opposite. They don't have the name, but I can't remember how many. Is Summoning one member? Or I can't remember. A lot of these black metal bands have like one guy doing it, but yeah, I've heard plenty of Summoning, and I quite liked a lot of it, to be honest. Oh, hello to you. If I could rewrite you into any story. Oh. Well, actually, I do have one. I was about to say I can't do that. Well, I would rewrite the end to the Silmarillion, and I mean the Quenta Silmarillion. And this is the mantra of this channel. I'll make a video on this. I say that all the time. But the War of Wrath was a rushed job. Christopher Tolkien wanted to have the complete narrative from his father's writing, and he took some parts from like the last battle, which Dagorath. That's why there's some parts that are taken from that and put into the War of Wrath. But I think with the War of Wrath, it's so rushed. This is the biggest battle in the history of Middle Earth, like at that time and since. And it's a couple of pages, it's like the description of it. It's very short chapter. Arendil goes to Valinor, the host of the Valar comes over, Morgoth gets his arse kicked, and the world's broken. It's so quick. And I would rewrite that to give it a bit more depth, a bit more heavy on the conflict, more reaction about Morgoth's defeat. I just think it's too rushed, and I think it's one of the moments where Christopher Tolkien really should have put his own thoughts into this and not stuck so closely to his father's writings, because I think it's so strange. It's like the Silmarillion goes out in a whimper when it should be a massive explosion, with the War of Wrath. So I would rewrite that. Not that I could rewrite it better than Tolkien, I'm not saying that. But yeah, if I could have the chance, I would definitely expand upon that and end Quenta Silmarillion properly. What was another super chat there? Thanks very much again, Martin. Will it ever be adapted? Yes. I think I said that earlier. You might have already put the chat in. It will be adapted. It definitely will, even if it takes until it's public domain or something. Definitely. I think in our lifetime they'll do something with the Silmarillion, and I hope they do it right. I don't think they can, but I don't want to be such a pessimist. I might be blown away by its quality, but I would prefer, if they're doing it as a show, give it room to breathe. As I've said with the Lord of the Rings, my favorite chapter is the Council of Elrond. I like people just sitting around talking, and this is a problem with adaptations. It's kind of difficult to draw in hundreds of millions of people if you're just going to have them talking. But I'd like all these moments in the Silmarillion where there's not a lot of action to be shown. Don't skip over them to get more into orcs having their heads cut off and all that. Yeah, so I definitely think it will be adapted, but I don't really know what they'll do with it, to be honest. Well, there's loads of. I know I'm a bit behind in comments, but I'll get to you. There's more people watching than usual, so bear with me. One of our mods, Oliver, Morgoth himself. Yeah, this is the thing. What I want probably won't happen. The more adult you get, the less money will go into it, the less money it'll make, the more of a risk it is. It's riskier to do. So I think we've got very little chance of it ever happening. They'll probably make it more family friendly, and just think of that, a family friendly Silmarillion. Who would want to watch that? No. No, no. Can I say something positive about The Hobbit? Man, that might be the hardest question of the night. Uh, I really don't like the Hobbit trilogy. I went to see the first one in the cinema, and I was in that kind of mood where, well, it wasn't so bad, even though it was. Then I went to see the second one and nearly walked out of it at the bit where I hate fan service and callbacks and all that kind of thing. It's cheap, and I don't like that. Everyone turning and going, "Oh, I get what they did there," but see, it was with Toriel doing the kind of healing, and they basically just copied the Arwen scene. And honestly, I was just so close to saying, "This is terrible. I'm out of here." But I watched it, and there's so much that was bad about that film series. I didn't see the third in the cinema, but I watched it when it was on Netflix, and the third one was worse. It just got worse, that trilogy. The third one looked plastic, and about 2 hours of it was just this big fight. We've no idea what's going on. I hated the villains they used. Azog was a joke. I hated the way they did Sauron with that weird voice and all these stupid lines he was saying to Gandalf. It was just nonsense. And I'll never watch them again. I really didn't like them. But you're wanting something positive, so I will say, even though I hated all the dwarves, I did like Dwalin and Balin. Uh, Not how I imagined Balin, but I like the actor and I like the performance. A bit of soul to it, and I liked Dwalin as well. I think on the Melonheads podcast, when they asked me who I would have play Helm Hammerhand, or voice him, I should say, is the guy that did Dwelling, and that's who I would pick. But I liked them. I did like them, and I basically hated everything else. I think even Gandalf wasn't as cool as it was in Lord of the Rings. It seems like um, Ian McKellen was even a bit tired of it, and I don't want to put all the blame on Peter Jackson. We know that it was all rushed, and I'm not wanting to lay all the blame at his feet, but that could have been so much better. And if someone else asked what was wrong with the Hobbit, we could talk about that. But let's see. The most grievous omission. Tom Bombadil. No, I think grievous omission. Oh, sorry, I'm kind of pausing. I want to really think of. I don't want to rush into an answer if there's a bit of thought put into it. I've never thought of it in terms of they omitted that and they shouldn't have omitted it. It's more they changed something which I don't think they should have changed. But so you're asking like for each part of the trilogy. I don't even think I can answer it. There's obviously moments from the books that are missing, but I don't think it's always just about the moments. It's about like the feel of it. It's for example, one of my favorite moments in the Fellowship of the Ring is when the wolves attack the Fellowship in Holland, and Gandalf has that great moment where the trees are all on fire, and it's one of the first times we see Gandalf doing something where you're like, holy crap. And they didn't put that in there, but then they had the really strange moment where the wargs attack Theoden and Aragorn and all that in the Two Towers. Choices like that I just think are really strange. But yeah, I think there's one that I can answer, and it'll be from the Fellowship, really, which is not the Glorfindel, even though I think Glorfindel should have been there. Grievous omission is the Council of Elrond, and I know people say, but the Council of Elrond was there. That's not really the Council of Elrond, to be honest. That's my favourite chapter. The longest chapter in The Lord of the Rings was about 5 minutes of screen time, and that's a problem with adaptations. And I would have loved a bit more time to breathe, characters to talk, discuss the ring, discuss Sauron, and just take a bit of a breath. And we don't need to go right out again and get into battles. Some of the best moments in Tolkien are just characters sitting, talking to each other, and that was omitted quite a lot. And I'd probably answer it that way. But if I was to jump into Two Towers, Return of the King, I'd probably spend too long thinking about it. But if it does pop into my head, I'll bring that up again. Favorite music theme? Probably Rohan. I say probably Rohan. It must be Rohan. That's great piece of music. Just listen to it on its own. It's not exactly like a Anglo-Saxon kind of theme for the Rohirrim, but it just feels right, I think. And that's one of the great things about Howard Shore's score. Is if I played you the Sauron's theme or theme from Saruman and Isengard, you'll instantly recognize it, and it's obvious when we're what kind of realm we're talking about and all that, and it's just brilliant. But I think Rohan's theme it's so cool the way it you have the really beautiful moments where we're seeing Edoras and Medicel, and we're seeing all the these kind of reflective moments where the music's all kind of really calm, but then they still bring it back during like the battle sequences, and it pops up in Return of the King as well. But you can recognize the theme, but they're like the kind of motif is there, but they've changed it just enough where it's the mood changes, and this is why he's a composer, and it's brilliant. So I would say that would be my answer for sure. But I really love just about all the music they use throughout Lord of the Rings. Oh, there's another. I'll get to you in a second, Tilperion. There's yet another super chat. I keep forgetting to bring them up. I'm so far behind in the comments. I'll be here for about 10 hours. Well, it's Martin again. Thanks very much. Yes, I watched that. It was okay. I know it sound a bit condescending or something there, but it's I didn't agree with all of it, and I think there's a few bits wrong, but it's a good video, and I like to think that I do analysing evil in all my Morgoth videos, but they don't get those kind of views. But he's my favourite character, as I said earlier, and even though I wouldn't make a full video just analysing that one aspect of him, I think it does pop up, and anytime I talk about him. And yeah, that was a decent enough video, I think. Let's go back up. where I was supposed to do Tilperion there, wasn't I? Sorry, I'm just finding it. I'm going to try and get through these comments a bit quicker. Oh, I say that. I want to get through these comments a bit quicker, and then a Denethor question comes up. I don't want to comment on the performance. He did very well for what was written, but again, just like the Frodo thing, that's not Denethor. I didn't get this idea that this figure that we were watching in the film was a broken man who used to be a Lord of Men. I didn't really get that impression from him. Denethor is another character that is one of my favorites, especially to like analyze and discuss. Denethor is one of the best written human characters that Tolkien had put on the page, and that's specifically because of his fall and this idea that even though we've not seen him at his best, it's totally believable that at one point he was a different man, and we're witnessing not like a downfall. It's like the downfall's happened. It's just getting even worse, and that was completely missing from the film. It was just horrible, nasty, kind of crazy, and not like no foil for Gandalf. He's meant to stand up to Gandalf and truly believe that he can stand up to him. None of that in the film, and yeah, that's a real shame, that one, because Denethor deserved a lot better, I think. But I'd still say Frodo was worse, just because of how important Frodo is throughout the whole story. Just going down. Cryo Boy, you're a drummer in Dundee. Absolutely. I just play guitar on my own and record it, and that actually, I've not been in a band for years. I might take you up on that. We can sing songs about Lord of the Rings. Oh, it's you again. Could the Valar be adapted for big, small screen? Should they always be kept removed, unseen, inferred? This is another one that sometimes not seeing them is better. How can you show Manwë properly, for example, or Yavanna as a force of nature? We know from Tolkien's text that the Valar could take all these different shapes. He even mentions Yavanna being a tree. No, how do you show all this stuff on screen without it being really weird or cheesy? Or this is why it's so good written down. Would I like to see the Valar? I think if they showed them, it would probably just be like we see gods of Olympus in other films and stories. But I don't want to say don't show them, but yeah, I think it could still be powerful if these great figures were not shown on the screen. They're mentioned off screen. It's treat them like you would treat Eru or someone like that. Just they're mentioned but not actually seen as part of a story. Oliver. My take on Galadriel and the Rings of Power. Oh dear. A warrior Galadriel. How much Tolkien do you think is in this interpretation? Not a lot. I think there's this thing that's happened with Rings of Power where when they've made certain choices, you get a lot of these people who, in a lot of the cases, are experts in Tolkien. They're published scholars and all this, but it's as if they can't accept that there's choices just being made by a production company. They start quote mining and, I think, misinterpreting text and giving you a little sentence here and there to say, see, they're paying attention to the text. Like Galadriel was a warrior and all that. I think even in Tolkien's last writings, last thoughts on Galadriel, he never imagined her as a warrior. Standing up to Fëanor and the kinslaying wouldn't make her a warrior. Even if she took up the sword to fight, I still don't think that makes her a warrior. A warrior is something different. I think Galadriel's above that, to be honest. Especially in Tolkien's last thoughts on her, she's basically like a saint by the end, which I disagree with as well, but it's Tolkien's story, isn't it? But I think by the end, what Tolkien imagined of Galadriel, she's so far removed from being a warrior. And I get what they're doing. They're doing this, they keep calling her young Galadriel, which I really dislike, but they're saying that this figure at the end of the First Age is not the same figure that we see in the Third Age, which they're right about. So this is how they're developing that character. And she's not going to be exactly like we see her in Lothlorien. Am I really upset that they've made her a warrior? Well, no, I just think it's a bit weak. Galadriel's special. I can't believe I'm mentioning something like Star Wars. I've not really watched any Star Wars stuff since it came back, episode 7. I'm just bringing that up because when I was younger, when I watched the old ones and obsessed about them, I always loved that someone like Yoda didn't fight. It seems like he was so powerful that you couldn't fight him. Like that's how but then they ruined that when they did the prequels and he's got a little mini lightsaber and he does fight. I'm like, well, that's crap. He's not special anymore. That's what I kind of feel about Galadriel. I think she's so great that she wouldn't even have to fight. But, swinging swords puts bums in seats. Did I notice that she fought? No, I saw in the appendices. No, they did those great extras on those discs. They were going to put it at Helm's Deep, and they did film parts, and then there was like backlash, or they didn't think it worked, or something like that, and she got dropped. But I didn't know that maybe you're saying that there's maybe some scenes that are left in that you can see in the background or something like that. No, I've not noticed that. I'll try and look out next time I watch it, but I'm glad they cut that out, though. That's so stupid. But just been saying that you can spot her if you freeze frame. Yeah, it must just be some of those scenes they filmed. They kept the battle in, but she's there. Yeah, that's a bit stupid, but I don't think the elves should have even been there anyway. This is a battle of men, and the elves shouldn't have been there, but it is what it is. Well, it's not up to him when it goes public. He can't. Well, I know he's dead now. I don't mean he can't do anything. But even if he said in the will, I will haunt you, Tolkien children, if you ever let the First Age be adapted. It'll happen. Things go public, and it's the only thing. I'm not an expert on this. There's probably people in the chat that are, But it's a bit like the Winnie the Pooh thing. It's like you can do stories now about Winnie the Pooh, but you can't do it the way that someone else has imagined Winnie the Pooh. So I think you can do Winnie the Pooh, but you can't do Winnie the Pooh with the red T-shirt on, that kind of thing. So there'll be caveats for Tolkien going public, but yeah, the first age will be adapted. It's definitely going to happen. Yes, absolutely. That would be brilliant, actually. Really good idea. Touring the Fall of Numenor as stage plays, well, tragedies. Absolutely. And it's one of these things where you even think that if someone approached the estate with that and said, "We want to do the tragedy of Turin as a stage play," they would let them do it. Um, Maybe they've been approached and they've said no because the estate's kind of crazy, but I would love that. I think that's a more exciting adaptation than working out how they could ruin it on a TV show or something. But I think that's a great question and great idea, and it's maybe one of these things that we will see at some point. But that would work. Both of those are great examples as well. You probably picked the two best stories that would work as stage plays. A lot of dramatic talking on stage with Ar-Pharazôn and Sauron and all this. It's actually really great to think about. To be honest, I've never considered that before. Um, Here's a good one. My favorite change. There's not many of them. There's one that I usually go to. It might seem really, really boring, but I think it was a very good decision to have spoilers for anyone who's not read Tolkien or watched the movies and what you're doing here. I think having Boromir's death at the end of the Fellowship of the Ring was a good choice, and I'm going to make, here we go again. I'm going to make a video about this. That there's a video I'm going to make about just why Boromir doesn't die in the Fellowship of the Ring, and he ends up dying in what we call like Volume 2, if you're doing the separate releases for the Two Towers. There is a reason for that, and there's evidence that Boromir wasn't always going to die in the first chapter of the Two Towers, which I'll do in a video. But that's my favorite change. That's, dramatic. It works. It's a good end to that film. It'd have been so strange. Like, compare that to how they ruined The Hobbit, where Smaug, as you're supposed to say. I would probably say Smaug, but Smaug doesn't die. If I remember right, he doesn't die in the second film. He dies very early into the third film, to the point where when I was watching that second film in the cinema, and then like he just flew away to Lake Town, and then it ended. I was like, what the hell was that? They should have cut out a lot of the crap from the second film with Legolas and all that, and kill the dragon at the end of the second film. They didn't, and that's. Can you imagine they actually did kill Boromir at the beginning of the Two Towers movie? This is one change when it comes to adaptations that it works. That they killed him at the end of the Fellowship. It makes the ending of that film really powerful with him dying and Frodo deciding to go on his own and then with Sam. Let's comment. Oh, another channel, Men of the West. hello to you if you're still around. You probably left this comment about half an hour ago, and I've taken so long to get to it. So, yeah, many of the rest with the OG for Tolkien channels. And yes, like me, you've not been invited. I don't know if you got invited to any premieres or anything like that. I didn't get invited to anything. I didn't get offered tickets, anything like that. But I'll watch it. I finish my work early on Fridays, and I'll definitely be watching. And who knows what it'll be like. But if it's a good show, then that's cool. If I don't like it very much, it honestly doesn't change my life at all. So we'll see how it goes. But I do hope it's actually good. I don't want to go into something hoping that it's terrible, even if it's not even slightly related to Tolkien or anything. I do hope it's an enjoyable show. I'd like a good show to watch. So, so thanks for dropping in. I think you're probably gone now. Sorry, there's so many comments here. I'm trying to find the next one. I wouldn't say. A good medium for potential adaptation. I kind of think a graphic novel would, like, I've got quite a few. I don't dislike graphic novels or anything. I've got quite a few like H.P. Lovecraft adapted ones and all that kind of stuff. But I think when you're doing that, you're taking out a lot of the text. It's kind of watered down a bit, but I think it could probably work in terms of some really good artwork. So, I would read a graphic novel of the Silmarillion. I'd love to see like one of my favorite artists or something do that and just read it in a different way. I don't see any problem with that at all, and I think it would be a good experiment. But I think it would obviously pale in comparison to the book. But there's plenty of great books I've read that I've read the graphic novel version, like classics, like even like Dracula and all that kind of stuff. And they're good graphic novels. But you always go back to the book, don't you? They're always better. Even with good artwork, I still prefer to imagine it in my own head. That's an interesting point here. They did that with Star Wars, didn't they? When those new ones come out, which again I've only seen the episode 7 one. I read a lot of this stuff online where people started forgiving the prequels, which I when the episode 1 came out, I was about 10 or something like that. I was a 10. No, I was older than that. It's like 12 or 13. And they weren't very good. And now people are like, actually, they're not that bad because they're comparing it to something that was worse. But who knows? I've not seen the Amazon show yet. Keyboard dancers. Yeah, Phil Dragash. Well, people know I really like Phil's work. I give him a shout out in every video description, even when I don't use his stuff. But the Soundscape project is amazing. Some mistakes there which he was correcting, but then I remember that because I was supporting him when he was first putting them on YouTube. I remember donating and all that stuff, and we talked. But he started to re-record them because he was like, "No, I've learned a lot from the process. I'm now going to go back and do it again and do it better." And that's around the time that I think it was the estate or it was Howard Shore. I can't remember, like not Howard Shore himself, but the use of the music. I think it was maybe the estate started taking down the videos and then he stopped. So I think he would have went through the whole thing again and re-recorded it, but it got taken down. And now we've got like these originals, and I think there's a few chapters that were re-recorded, but incredible work. And I'm making my way through the Hobbit one now. It's not Phil Dragash, it's Bluefax, I think. Is that the right name? Not as good, but Phil Dragash work was unbelievably good. And yes, I still listen to that. Like at some point in the week, I'll listen to that when I'm like in bed or whatever. And I've been doing that since they come out. So I've probably went through that audiobook about 30 times or something like that. And it's well worth it if no one's checked it out. Everyone's always saying, what's the best audiobook? And they're talking about all these new versions and all these official versions. His version is easily the best. Yeah, that's what I kind of thought. That's the problem with a lot of these videos. It's you're just getting a history lesson, aren't you? It's hard. It's not really analyzing Morgoth's evil. It's just telling you the evil things that he did, and we all know that, don't we? But I prefer discussing his character, his motives, what led him to act the way he did, and how much further he would have went if he had achieved victory and all that. Is far more interesting than just saying he was really evil because he did this. It's, well, why did he do that? And I didn't get a lot of that from the video. But I think, I don't want to badmouth another channel or something like that. I'm not meaning that, but I think maybe with some of the pronunciations and that, I don't know if he's like a big Tolkien guy. I didn't see any other ones in his channel. Maybe he just researched it for that video or something like that, and he wasn't like very knowledgeable about Tolkien. I don't know who the guy is, but yeah, it was an okay video. There's quite a few questions coming in. I don't mean to be ignoring them that are kind of repeats, like filming the Silmarillion as a show. I think I've covered that already, so sorry if it seems like I'm ignoring your question, but I really think I've covered that. I don't think it would work, but I think they'll do it, and I probably wouldn't do it as a film. I don't think it would work as a film. See, there's so many comments here. I don't know how these other channels. I think when I watched a little bit of In Deep Geek, a stream that he was doing, and I think when he was on it, there was like 500 people watching and commenting. I don't know how he manages that. I've had like 80 or something during this, and I can't keep up with the comments. Let's just see. No, I have not watched the episodes. I didn't get to go to any premiere. I wasn't invited. Didn't get any tickets. I didn't go to any public screenings or anything like that. I've no idea what the show's like, but I'll watch it tomorrow. And I won't make videos about it or anything like that, but I'll probably share my opinion somewhere, but just probably not in a video. Well, I wouldn't say everyone is abusing Tolkien when they do it. I think there's genuinely people out there who seem to be adamant that the show is going to be amazing, and they do whatever they can to justify it. And yeah, I don't want to get into there's a two-side thing here, but there's definitely people, especially on the hellscape that is Twitter, who will misquote Tolkien all the time to say, whatever this show is doing, or that's following what Tolkien had written, because look at this. And there's some very controversial, maybe, opinions about that. So, for example, I don't want to get into a race debate here or anything. I don't think it's that interesting, but there's a bit where it talks about Sam's brown hand. And then I remember all these people on Twitter used that little bit to say, there's black hobbits and all that kind of stuff. And I've never read it that way. I thought it was very strange because I know people who are, where I'm from, who've got quite dark skin, but they're still white. It's I think people from Spain are white and they've got darker skin than I do, and it's just they were doing a lot of that, and it's are you being serious? Are you meaning to do that? And it was coming up all the time. This is proof that Tolkien imagined these hobbits this way. And I was like, you're being disingenuous, or you're being really dim when you do that. And it was from really, people that are teaching Tolkien at unis and universities and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, I think there's some sort of agenda here when you're kind of saying that. That's such a simplistic view. If Tolkien had meant it that way, that's completely fine. I'm not complaining about casting non-white people in roles, but I'm just saying this whole I'm going to take this quote that clearly means something else and say that it means this, and it's that happens all the time. It was a bit like the people were saying that Tolkien was including like transgenderism because of the descriptions he'd used for the Valar and their raiment. Again, it's clearly not what Tolkien meant, but people like to take these quotes and say this is it because they don't really want to admit that an author they like was unaware of views they have, or from a time where they weren't really that important to discuss, and they'll just justify it that way. And that's something that happens a lot on Twitter, and I don't get involved in it because you can't reason with any of these people on Twitter. I don't like discussions on Twitter anyway because there's no room to discuss. You've got like a little box that you can type in, and the opinions that I've read on that site are crazy when it comes to Tolkien. And I am basically there to promote my channel, and that's it. If I ever reached 100,000 subscribers and the channel was doing really, really well, and I didn't need to promote it anymore, I would be off Twitter as soon as possible. Do a thingy on Faramir. Got a raw deal. Yeah, well, again, this is like the Denethor situation. There was some behind the scenes talk with the filmmakers about. I think I remember Philippa Boyens talking about, Faramir as a character, okay, rejecting the ring, saying he wouldn't take it, and helping Frodo, but they have these amazing conversations where they're kind of working each other out. And over the years, with the amount of times I've read Lord of the Rings, book 4 has become like a favorite. I absolutely love the interaction with these characters, and Faramir is a brilliant character, and he's like symbolizing there's hope in men. He's being compared to his brother. Very important character. And they ruined him because, according to Philippa Boyens, it would die on screen with the way Faramir is in the book. And you're not doing it right, or you're not understanding it right if you think that's the case. Faramir represents something. You know, he's closer to Aragorn than he is to Boromir in terms of his character and personality, and it's very important that you show that on the screen. But they couldn't do it. They had to keep on making all the characters like weak in some way and tempted in some way, because they think that that causes the drama on the screen and that's better. But there's plenty of other characters you can do that with. But you have to have that comparison with these good-natured, strong-willed characters. And Faramir got a raw deal, as you say. He's got his moments in the films that I like, but that whole bit in the Two Towers where he's, you know, nasty to Frodo and Sam, and, you know, he's taking them to Denethor, and it's like that's not Faramir. And it's a shame that they think they have to do that to make the story more interesting. It's not their story they're telling, in my opinion. I want to start a super chat again. Thanks very much. You have asked, what do I think about the time compression? Give me a sec. I need more water. I'm addicted to water. Time compression. I think it's a terrible decision. They're doing it because they're saying that they'd be killing off characters all the time. But that's strange because there's immortal characters that are going to be all the way through it, and I think that'd be really interesting. Can you imagine Galadriel, for example, in season 1, episode 1, and she'd be there. I don't know how many they're doing, 5 seasons or whatever. It's like she'll be there in the last episode. But imagine this spanned thousands of years, and there was all these human characters who would come and go, and these immortal characters would be there throughout. And that's exactly what happens in Tolkien's stories. There's these ancient characters that have seen it all and they've been there, and the race of men, you know, they're around for a while and then will die. But these immortals are there and they're telling the stories. But no, they compress it, and all these huge major events are all going to happen in a really short space of time because they don't want to kill off characters or bring in new characters. I have no idea how that will work. It's all these really important figures are around right at the beginning. You know, it's so strange seeing like promo images of Ar-Pharazôn, for example. I'm like, he should be in like the last season, and he's here already. But the Rings of Power haven't been forged. I'm like, this is strange. And I think they're going to go all these kind of crazy routes. I don't know this, right? I'm just speculating, but I think they're going to go all these routes where they're going to have some of the ring wraiths be, you know, characters that we see, and maybe Numenorians. And I just think the time compression kind of puts this over the edge, as, you know, it's what people say is fan fiction. They can have these big moments of the rings will get forged, there's the downfall of Numenor, there's the last alliance, but it's all happening in such a short space of time. That feeling of ancientness and, you know, such huge scale over millennia is gone. You're going to have characters in season 1 that are mortal who will still be there in season 5, and that just sucks, to be honest. It's I don't know how they make it work, if it will work, and they've completely lessened the scale of Tolkien by doing it. And it could have worked if they just used it as an opportunity to have seasons be dedicated to some major event. The ring, the forging of the rings, the war of the elves and Sauron, the downfall of Numenor, the last alliance. Do it that way, and have, like I said, characters who are there throughout, and new characters that pop up, and there's like a running theme throughout all of it. They've not done that, so I'm not a fan of it. I don't know how it will work, but I don't think it will work. And if they manage to prove me wrong and they pull it off, I'll apologize and say well done to those writers, but I can't see how that will work, to be honest. This is a bit like Fellowship of the Ring. When you say like true to the book, I think Fellowship of the Ring and Unexpected Journey are both closest. They're not quite perfect or anything like that, but they're definitely the closest. And they definitely go off the rails, which you've just said. I didn't even read that part. I was just about to say it. They go off the rails as they go on. And that's, for The Hobbit, that's especially bad because they dragged it out to 3 films. I really, really think The Hobbit should have been 2. 2 films, have the dragon die at the end of the first film and do a build up for the 5 armies. And if you're really wanting to put Dol Guldur in there, then do it. But 3 films for The Hobbit is, if you can do 3 films for The Hobbit, with the length of the books and all that, imagine they did 3 films for the Fellowship of the Ring, and that by the end of the first film, let's say it was a 3-hour film, and it gets to the end of it, and they're at the Old Forest or something like that. That's what it's like. It's so weird, and it's obviously for money. He was saying it because they had filmed so much, as potential here, all these appendices scenes that were terrible, by the way, but it's for money. It's obviously for money. These films all made like $1 billion each, and An Unexpected Journey, you can tell there was this kind of a little bit of love and care. They were following the story, and then it just goes crazy, and it was a frustrating experience, introducing characters that shouldn't have been there. And as I said, the appendices scenes were absolutely terrible. Can everyone remember Saruman doing cartwheels against the ringwraiths and zombie Galadriel and all that? It's like, I was nearly laughing in the cinema at how terrible this was when I was watching it. I'm looking at comments from 25 minutes ago. I need to hurry up. Some channels. There's a few people leaving. Farewell. There's a couple of questions in that are just Tolkien questions. I can't really answer them. This is just adaptations tonight. Sorry about that. Am I looking forward to it? Not especially. I'm not like desperate to see it or anything, but I hope it's good. I think I talked to the Melon Heads about this. That's the podcast I'm on, which was really funny because they invited me on. They says we're going to talk about this adaptation. I'd never heard of it, and I was okay. I'll come on, and I didn't know anything about it. And it's an interesting story. I like the story of Helm Hammerhand. I like these. I like this idea of doing these little animations that are about other stories in the Legendarium. I think that's a cool idea. A lot of it will be made up, of course, because there's not an awful lot of text to go on, but it could be good. I like animation. I want to see the style. I've only seen like concept art, which I know the guys on the podcast were really excited, but that was just concept art. That's not what it's going to look like. And I know they're kind of following Peter Jackson's style, which I'd rather they didn't. I'd rather they did their own style. But I don't know. I think the War of the Rohirrim's been sadly kind of ignored because of the show, the Rings of Power. But it could be really good. It's as I said, animation's cool and it's a good story with Helm Hammerhand. If the animation looks good, I'll really be into that. So and I think this isn't a show, is it? It's a film. So um, maybe I'm looking forward to it more than I actually thought. We'll see. Mm. Now we're talking. Would I play a Soulsborne type game set in the First Age? You better believe I would. Soulsborne. People don't know. Dark Souls, Demon Souls, Bloodborne. It's like From Software games that are among my favorite games ever. I don't know what they would do in the First Stage though, because it's not really suited for it. But I would play it. I'd get addicted to it, and that sounds good to me. Mm-mm-mm. I wonder what this. There's a random question saying a random comment saying like Hermione's black face when she was hiding in the dark. I completely didn't know what that was referring, but I think I was talking about brown-skinned hobbits earlier. And sorry to Toppy, are you Finnish with that name? Is that a Finnish name? I might be completely wrong. Yeah, this was the very first question on the stream. So, as I said, I've played Battle of Middle Earth games, the old film tie-in games on the PlayStation 2, and the Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor games. Every kind of Lord of the Rings Tolkien video game I've played, I've actually really liked. There's not been one I've played that I haven't liked. A few familiar faces in the chat. I think one of the big channels, I think it's In Deep Geek, I think he's doing a Rings of Power stream right now, so I'm surprised everyone's not disappeared. And Matt has hit the nail on the head. Tolkien himself said that his whole thing's about death, the way different races have a relationship with it. It's the core of all the writing. And as Matt says, they've completely missed the opportunity to have a central theme and idea of Tolkien's works be front and center. Having immortal characters be throughout long years with different kings coming in and all these different kings of Numenor pop up and the elves are still there. Maybe have some of these elves visiting from Tolaresia or wherever and have this fear of death and hatred of immortals become a thing over time on the show. It's going to be one of these things again where it's a multi-season show and they're still going to rush it. They're still going to rush this thing where Ar-Pharazon's there at the beginning. They're going to instantly hate elves and want immortality when it should be a build-up. And yeah, this is a problem with adaptations. But Matt's right. I like this comment. We could have had further insight into why mortal characters become like desperate for immortality. It has to happen slowly over time. That's a downfall. It can't just happen as a season cliffhanger or something like that. I don't have any that come to mind except this one does pop up from time to time where people say, "Do you think that Melkor could be shown on screen?" There's a really cool series of artworks from Elena Kukanova, very famous Russian artist for Tolkien, who I can't use in my videos anymore. But I absolutely love her version of Melkor or Morgoth. But I get this strange Mads Mikkelsen vibe from it, and I really, really think that could work. I ever since I saw the artwork, I started to imagine, put him in some makeup, do some effects in that, but uh, it could work. He's got that kind of, he's handsome enough and all that, but he's got quite a strange look about him, and he could really pull off this uh, grand kind of evil character who's fallen kind of look. And I know that's not Lord of the Rings like you're asking there, but that just popped into my head. I think I'd love to see someone like that as Morgoth. But Lord of the Rings, um, it's hard because there's a lot of casting I really liked. Um, who would be Saruman now? I thought Christopher Lee was a great Saruman. I thought Ian McKellen was a great Gandalf, and even though the character of Aragorn wasn't quite Tolkien's character, I really like Viggo Mortensen as him as well. I'd maybe change the Hobbits, um, Denethor, and maybe some elves. I don't think Elrond was cast particularly well. I don't have a problem with Hugo Weaving, but he is not how I imagine Elrond when I read the books. But when you're saying who would I choose, I don't really know, to be honest. But I just know that there's some figures I would change. Um, mm, mm, mm. Yeah, this is what's strange about it is I don't know what they're going to do. Like, are the ringwraiths going to be corrupted within 5 years? Uh, what about all these wars, like you say, that take place over such a vast period, and Sauron's there for um, all of them, and yeah, it makes the immortal characters that are there, including like Sauron and all the elves, um, it kind of lessens their impact. I love this idea that Sauron was, corrupting the elves, not caring about these men on the Isle who then come over and humbled them quite easily, and he hated them. And then years later, he built himself up again, and then they came back and they were even stronger, and he went over there and corrupted them. But we're talking such centuries and centuries and centuries, and he's there the whole time, and it's almost as if they weren't equipped to deal with someone like that. That's all gone if we're talking it taking place over decades or something like that. And that's just my view. But I've not, even for the apologists on places like Twitter and all that, um, I've not read anyone, uh, justifying the time compression like in any kind of good way. Usually there'll be someone, especially TikTok content creators and all that. Those people, they would usually defend everything the show does, and I've not seen anyone defend the time compression because I don't think anyone would think it's a good idea, to be honest. There's comments that are disappearing. I wonder what those are. Have I missed a good question out? Someone says, good question. I'm trying to work out what it is. Mm-mm-mm-mm. Yeah, there's so many questions that I'm missing some. So you're saying repeat questions we know he'll ignore. If you've asked a question that I seem to have missed, that I think someone else has said that's a good question, can you put it back in the chat? Because I think I've maybe skipped over it by accident. No, I've not been asked about that. I'm looking forward to that. It's a bit different. I think it's kind of like a stealthy game, isn't it? And I like stealth games. They're some of my favorite games. People were complaining about the graphics. No, I don't mind that. I still play point and click games from the 80s and the 90s. You know, Monkey Island's one of my favorite games. Pixel art graphics. No, I don't care about graphics in the game as long as it's a good game, and I hope it is. It's one thing I really like about it is the um the choice of design. You know, everyone's like, this thing that always happens. They're saying, why doesn't he look like Peter Jackson's version, and why does Gandalf not look like Peter Jackson's version, and all that? He's not Middle Earth. Let other people have their own ideas, and I'm looking forward to um, playing this and seeing what they do with it. And I like the company that makes it. I think I've got every game they've made. So yeah, I'm looking forward to playing that one. Character that is closest to the books in the Peter Jackson films. Grima Wormtongue is one of them. I really like that performance. It might look it's a bit on the nose with his look. You know, I don't think Grima Wormtongue uh, in real life would be so obviously creepy and evil. You'd get that kind of feeling from maybe, but I think they made him look a bit too evil in it. But I still like the performance. Uh, I think he acts pretty closely to how I think Wormtongue acts in the books. I like that. And maybe someone like Saruman. I know we got a lot of stuff that wasn't in the books because you have to have more scenes with him because it's a film. But I just love Christopher Lee though, and the booming voice and the fact that he obviously looks very proud and but he pulls off evil very well. You can almost tell like at some point he wasn't quite like that and he's just kind of fallen. And Gandalf the Grey, maybe. I don't think Gandalf the White's quite there, but I like the Fellowship of the Ring, Gandalf the Grey, Ian McKellen performance. You know, I love the way he interacts with Frodo and the hobbits. And yeah, I think this is why I always say these casting choices are really good. They do the script justice, they do Tolkien justice, I think. And I'd happily put them forward for being closest. So as loads of bikes can pass. And some comments here, hold on. Thank you very much, Matthew. I don't I think people think I hate movies or adaptations or whatever because I don't talk about them in the channel, but it's just it's a lack of interest. That's all it is. I've always said it. If someone wanted to hear my thoughts on the War of the Last Alliance and the prologue for the films, I would just want to talk about the Last Alliance in the text. I always just think everything in the text would be more interesting than how they've adapted it, and that's all it is. Really, it's there's nothing about adaptations like that's more interesting for me to spend time making a video than just the text itself. That's all it really is. So if I was doing reviews of episodes, something which I won't do, it's not because I loathe the idea of Rings of Power or anything like that. It's I could just be making a video about something I find a lot more interesting. That's pretty much it. It's not some hatred of the show that I've not watched yet. And I've always had that attitude for Rings of Power that it's not even an adaptation, it's like a influenced by kind of show. It can't really be an adaptation because there's no book that it's based on or something. It's bits of text from different sources that are allowed to use, and they're developing a story around it. It's like an inspired by kind of thing. And if I spend so much time talking about just a show, it's time away from talking about far more interesting things. I think it might harm the channel by doing that. Every other channel seems to be covering it, but I don't even know what I'd say. I don't want to do episode reviews. I don't think I'd have a lot of interesting stuff to say, and I don't want to spend like a lot of time moaning about, well, they chose to do this and that isn't how Tolkien did it. That's what a lot of it's going to be, and it's I don't want the channel to turn into that kind of thing, to be honest. Yeah, it's. I bet it's one of those ones that requires you to. It's like it's free to play, but you have to, empty your bank account to do anything worthwhile on it. Like, if you're talking about games, I wouldn't like to play mobile games. Would be up there. And see you later to people who are dropping out. I'm doing it for an hour and 45 minutes so far. I'm not quite done yet. If there's more questions coming through. Surprisingly few controversial questions. I honestly thought there was going to be loads of really difficult questions and like, oh, should I answer that one? No, will I be cancelled on Twitter or something? Hopefully, because I bloody hate Twitter. See, I've covered this quite a few comments so far, but I was just thinking, how are they going to do this? Justify the motivation of elves and the Rings of Power. This is something quite interesting. It's the motives aren't really laid out in the main text. It's you get a lot of this stuff from letters and that, and there's the preservation of things, the fear of change. They don't want decay of Middle Earth. They want a Valinor in Middle Earth. There's all these reasons, and Sauron's able to tap into those and manipulate them, and he wants that as well. Actually, he wants this eternal domain of his that he'll lord over, and it adds to his fall and everything. They're not going to go that deep in the TV show, but how are they going to justify it? Are they just going to? Are they going to go into that kind of depth with Celebrimbor, or are they going to maybe go over the route of he's a bit egotistical and he wants to be the best forger or something like that, and Sauron's going to appeal to his ego or something like that? It might be something along those lines, which is a far less interesting reason than the real one. That's part of it, but it's like the nature of elves, and I don't know if they're going to go to that kind of level, to be honest. And there's still a few more questions about Silmarillion adaptations. I know people are just dropping in, but I've covered that a few times. I'll just repeat again. I think there will be an adaptation of some sort at some point. I think it'll be very difficult to have it work, but I'd bet everything I own that in our lifetime there'll be the Silmarillion on TV or in film. And Matt's asked a good question that I can't answer because it's not about adaptations. You have to come back another time and ask that. Mm-mm-mm. Do you have an example of, in film, of the immense scale of history you thought the films are missing? Good question, actually. It's put me on the spot a bit. Probably not. Not at the top of my head. But if there's something that deserved it, it would be Lord of the Rings. Something. It's part of its like DNA. You have to show that this story that's taking place is not the beginning. There's been a long, long, long history beforehand. I'm sure many people reading Lord of the Rings before they ever heard of Silmarillion or anything like that, they'd pick up on those details, mentioning of Morgoth and uh, Aragorn singing about Beren and Luthien, and Sam mentioning Angband, uh, and comparing it to what they're going through, going to uh, Mordor. There's all these references that are like how we would maybe mention mythology in our own world. That's what I mean with the scale. It doesn't have to be an art choice or design choice or something. It's the way the characters interact with each other, the use of songs and tales. It's very hard to do in a film, but that stuff adds to it. That's what makes everything seem so old and lived in. The elves are leaving Middle Earth when we get to Lord of the Rings because they've been there for so long, and you start to wonder about that. These are the kind of things that I don't think the films achieved as well as they could have. I'm not saying it was terrible by any means, anything like that. I'm just saying there's things you can do to add to the scale. There's little moments like when they go to Moria. Uh, Obviously, they need to speed along the story, but you do get these moments where they're going through the halls, and you just start to get this sense of scale, quite literally. But this is what shows how great writer Tolkien was, because in the books when that happens, Gimli sings a song about Durin, and you don't get that in the films. That's the stuff that's missing. They tell you the history of the world in the story, but in a very natural way. It's never just a character saying, "Okay, well, this character did this and this happened." It's always going to provide it to you in a like someone asks a question about it, they'll sitting around a fire hearing about it, and or the songs, a lot of songs, and that's all missing, in my opinion. I, well, this is a kind of yes and no one here. I think Martin Freeman was a good Bilbo. I liked Ian Holm better, but I don't like Martin Freeman. I don't like him in anything really. I don't like him as an actor, but I'll admit he pulled off like the kind of mannerisms and attitude of Bilbo, and it's a shame that the Hobbit story, the films, became less about him as the Hobbit. It was about everyone else. So I think in An Unexpected Journey, he did pretty well, and I'll happily admit that, despite not liking the actor. So that's probably a compliment to pay him. I just really wish that Ian Holm was young at that time. I really like Ian Holm as Bilbo in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. They said that I know that the people making it have said they've mapped everything out. So that's why you're saying anyone outside the show, no, we don't know how they're going to deal with it. I really hope they do know how they're going to deal with it, and I hope it doesn't turn into a Game of Thrones situation, to the point where I felt like I wasted my time watching it. Like, it was really good, really good, really good. No, it's not as good. This is pretty bad. Well, this is terrible. To the point where I'm going to sell my Blu-rays because I'll never watch this again. Terrible. I really hope they don't do that. It'd be really crap if you were watching seasons of this TV show. Let's say it's really good, and we're watching it, and then it just falls apart at the end, and you're like, well, that was a disaster. Then you just never want to rewatch it. Rings of Power will do very well for me if it has a strong end. If at the end of it you watch it and say, I would watch that again, I think they've achieved something great if they're able to do that, because that seems to be very difficult for TV shows to do nowadays. I don't know. I don't know about that, because you have to have Celebrimbor's death, don't you? Which will be a big moment. No, the weird Celebrimbor, who doesn't look like Celebrimbor. That death, doing that thing. Remember that image where you see him going? Remember that? That was so ridiculous seeing that. But no, I don't think there'll be one event. I think there'll have to be something with the War of the Elves and Sauron and the Numenorians, and then revenge later or something like that. But you might be right. It might not be enough time to cover all of it. They might bring in the Celebrimbor stuff and forget about the War of the Elves and Sauron completely. I don't know. I don't know how they're going to do it. I really hope they do go full out with the Celebrimbor. We have to show that Sauron is very evil, and that's a very powerful moment for that. A torture of Celebrimbor, and I don't just mean like physical torture, like mental torture, trying to find these rings. If they can pull that off on a TV show, that'd be great. But I think they'll go more the physical torture route. But I'd argue that for an elf, mental torture might even be worse, and Sauron would be very, very good at doing that. So if they could manage that, that would be pretty cool. Edgar. The marketing. I think the marketing for this show was dreadful. The weird articles and exclusives in magazines, the abundance of teaser trailers, the Days of Our Lives promo, everything, like everything. I think I don't want to say they messed it up, because it's still going to be a huge show, I think, but it's the hype for the show could have been a bit different if they had managed their marketing better. And maybe this is just because it's Amazon. Amazon are like biggest media entertainment company on the planet and all that, but they're still quite new to doing this kind of thing, and it shows. I've never seen like an Amazon show really marketed. So they've tried it with Lord of the Rings, and it's been terrible, I think. And I also didn't like all the influencer stuff and super fans. Remember that disaster? Getting random people that had never interacted with Tolkien at all, calling them super fans and sitting around the table to say, "Oh, I'm looking forward to the show," and it's, what was that about? And they deleted that video, and then they're like, "Well, we need to bring in people who do know Tolkien a bit more," and they did bring in some, and some others that I wouldn't have sent, and that just started this whole shill and hater debate that's been going on for months, and it's really tiring. But yeah, they dropped the ball big time on that, I think. But I think the show is too big to fail. I think Amazon's too big to fail, obviously, and the show will still do really well. But I'm hoping maybe for um, season 2 or whatever that the marketing's a lot better. Um, I'm just remembering all those articles and the images they're releasing, and uh, it's just none of it was like, oh, I'm really looking forward to this. It's weird for such a like, the biggest TV show ever made that they would do that. I don't know. I said near the beginning of the stream I quite liked Balin and Dwalin. It's quite interesting that they gave these dwarfs personality and character, because obviously when you read The Hobbit, they're pretty much distinguished by like, the colour of their hoods, and they don't all have a lot of personality. Obviously Thorin's a big one, but I think it was good that they were giving the dwarves all these personalities, but I didn't like most of them. But I liked them. Obviously, Gandalf coming back, Ian McKellen as Gandalf. It's a big one. I liked Richard Armitage as an actor as Thorin. The worst thing about Thorin was the look, though. He didn't look like a dwarf. He looked like handsome Richard Armitage. He looked like they wanted him to be the Aragorn of The Hobbit, which I thought was a bad choice. I would have liked him to look more like a dwarf, but I liked his performance. And I liked, like I said, Martin Freeman in the first film. But other than that, I don't think Bard was particularly special. I didn't go crazy about Smaug or anything like that. Nothing kind of blew me away. Yeah, that's kind of my attitude towards The Hobbit. So I think one of the mods is leaving. Patricia, thanks very much for helping out. And yes, Melkor's still around. We'll be fine. The chat seems to be pretty friendly, so. And you did ask, you asked this question. Well, here's the thing, I really like Christopher Lee. I really like his voice. But I think the Children of Hurin audiobook's quite difficult to get through, because Christopher Lee's obviously got that powerful voice. He's very slow reader on that though, and it's a kind of booming voice. But I think over a full audiobook, it can be quite hard to listen to. I don't know if that's controversial or not, but yeah, I like Christopher Lee like doing a monologue or reading a big passage or something, but a full audiobook has to be taken in parts, because it's such a kind of powerful voice that I wouldn't listen to it for hours on end. It could be quite hard to sit through for so long, like overwhelming. But yeah, I'd still say I enjoyed it, to be honest. I do have the recording. Hello to you. What do I think of them? I can see why they did it. They were giving Arwen a bigger role in the story. They were going to do more with the love story with her and Aragorn. Unfortunately, Glorfindel, was cast aside because they weren't going to use him again. I can completely understand their film justification for including Arwen. I still would have preferred Glorfindel. I'd love to have seen what they'd done with him. I'd love a confrontation with the Nazgul. But if one of those guys you see at the coronation is meant to be Glorfindel, one of the really weird looking elves, I'm glad they didn't use him as Glorfindel. That'd have been terrible. But yeah, I think I can understand why they used Arwen. I wish they didn't, but I also wish that they didn't give her a role where she um, took over the part of Frodo with the Nazgul, one of Frodo's most important, most powerful moments, and Arwen got it. That's an absolutely terrible choice, and I didn't like it for that. But I also don't know that if they included Glorfindel, would they have given him that moment? I don't know. But all I know is that moment should have been Frodo's, and Arwen took it away from him. And unfortunately, Matt, again, you're asking loads of good questions, but I can't answer them. They're not. This is an adaptations only one, really. Simply because I never talk about adaptations, so I can't really answer the mythology stuff. But I hope I could answer that on another video at some point. Easy. It's Fellowship of the Ring, no contest. Best film, best volume, and yeah, this is when, even though it's not perfect, I think Peter Jackson was kind of still on the rails at that time, really, really putting an effort in to follow what was in the page, I think. And I know he made loads of choices and different decisions in that, but anyone can tell that Fellowship is, at least out of the three, the closest, even if it's still far off, closest to the books. And it starts to go, it gets crazier and crazier as the stakes increase through the other two films. But Fellowship's one I could watch, or I have watched over and over again, watched it dozens of times. One of the best films ever made, I think. And I'd easily say that's the best one. Whoops, I shouldn't have asked for controversial questions. What do I think of the casting of black people in Rings of Power? Well, I think people need to understand when a company spends $1 billion or whatever it is they've spent, anyone who thought that the only black people in the Rings of Power were going to be from Rhûn or Harad were completely delusional. And naive, I should probably say. Delusional seems a bit harsh, but there was no chance they were going to do that. And you have to think of it from Amazon's point of view here. Imagine there's two sides where they kind of don't care about race. They just say, if we're going to cast actors we want, if there's a character who doesn't, need to be white or whatever, we'll cast whoever we want. And there's going to be people who really hate that. They're going to say, none of these characters were not white in the Tolkien stories. You're destroying the legacy of Tolkien and all that. And you have that group of people here. And Amazon can just say, oh, you're just being racist or whatever. So they can hold that position. Or you can go to the other side and imagine Amazon were like, we're going to only hire black actors in roles from certain geographical locations where they would be like that. And a lot of people would then be saying Amazon were the racist ones. Now, if you were Amazon, such a huge company with shareholders and all that, which of those two positions would you go to? And it's completely obvious they're going to go for the one where they can accuse other people of being racist instead of being accused of it. And that's business. And I don't really care. I think I don't think it's authentic, of course. I've never imagined Miriel or has been black, or elves. I never imagined that any elf has been black. Does it bother me that they've done it? Not really. I don't think it's how Tolkien would have imagined him. That's a big thing. But I'm not naive. I know that they've spent a lot of money. It's current year, it's 2022. There was no chance that they weren't going to be involved in that way. People really should understand that. And it was never going to be any other way. So if you accept all that, it's up to you if you watch it or whatever. But I think there's far more interesting and worrying aspects of their story than the color of people they cast. We talked about time compression earlier, for example. That's going to make this show. It's going to be harder for the show to be a really good show than some of the characters are black. Black dwarves, black elves, whatever. To me, that's not going to make the story better or worse. So it's a thing that no one. I'm not saying I'm completely special and amazing for thinking this up or anything. No one anywhere seems to be talking about my biggest worry about shows like this, which is dialogue. Everyone keeps talking about adaptations and will it be good or bad, or what are they going to change? And no one seems to care that, without hyperbole, exaggeration, I think about 99.5% of the dialogue will be written by people who aren't Tolkien. So what really makes something Tolkien if everything everyone is saying on screen is not his writing? Tolkien's a lot more than just the plot. We're going to have the rings being forged. We're going to have the downfall of Numenor and the Last Alliance and all that. Yeah, that's fine. But everything that everyone's saying to each other is going to be made up by people who just work for Amazon. And no one seems to care about that. They just care about black elves and warrior Galadriel, and all these time compression. They seem to worry about all that stuff. And I'm like, well, I enjoy Tolkien a lot for the way characters talk to each other and the writing itself. Does no one care that everything everyone's saying over 5 seasons of TV is just going to be a scriptwriter from his own head? And that doesn't seem to be something that people worry about. So I don't know why. They're just caring about things like this, which if you really wanted me to answer, do I think that any of these characters should have been cast with black people? In terms of Tolkien's writings, no, but I understand why they did it. And I think they missed an opportunity. I don't know if they're still going to do it, but they missed an opportunity to really show these other places where they could have had predominantly black casts and show the influence of Sauron and the corruption of Sauron and how brutal he was with these places, and how they start to hate the people from Gondor and all this stuff. It's or like people from the north, and how the Numenorians brutalized them and all this. It's like they really could have done all that stuff, and they probably won't. Mark, you think you've given like 4 super chats. You don't have to do that. Thanks very much. Do I hope they'll be shown? No, I quite like not knowing who the Nazgul are, but I think 100% there's going to be some characters who will become the Nazgul, and I think they'll make some named characters that in the stories weren't, but they'll make them in this. So my theory is, I think someone quite high up in Numenor is going to become the Witch King, and I think that follows what a lot of people seem to believe, and I don't believe it, but I think they'll do that on this show, and I'd bet money that they would. There'll be at least 2 or 3 characters, I think, who at some point in the show will be men, and they will become the Nazgul, or it will imply that later they became the Nazgul or something. It's going to happen. And I don't know how that will work with the time compression, but if they don't do it for all of them, they'll at least do it for the Witch King. I think that's going to happen. And Altariel, thanks for coming along. You need to go. And Alex, will I be uploading the live stream? Yes, this one will be available on the channel. I'm going to edit the description, and I'm going to try and put timestamps in for all these questions. It'll probably take about 4 days to do it, but I will do that, and I'll put it on the channel for people to watch. Matt. I don't know if I want either option, to be honest. Maybe a mix. I think the problem is that I think they're going to show, if they show Anatar, for example, I've said this loads of times when I talk about Anatar. Anatar is not meant to look evil. That's his whole point. Sauron in his fair form is not meant to seem evil at all. And I think they're going to do it. They're going to have him with like evil grins, and it'll be played by some actor who's going to have like a really strange look about him. And Anatar should. I said this on another stream, I'm sure, or I talked about it somewhere else, where I said I would love it if, for people who don't know Tolkien, I would love it if Anatar was a character in the show at some point, and people were completely unaware that he was Sauron, like people who didn't know Tolkien. And if they managed to do that, that would have been a great achievement. It'd be like some big reveal. But obviously people who know Tolkien would know, well, it's Anatar, he's going to become Sauron. But have it so, have him being so deceitful, cunning, that he seems like a good character, because that's what Anatar is meant to be, and he's not meant to seem evil. This is what artwork gets wrong a lot of the time with Anatar, but I hope they manage to do that. But Sauron should seem otherworldly, maybe not pure evil. He's got his own motivations, he's got his own faults, but he should be kind of grand in scale. His failures are so much greater than the failures of like men, even though they're like expanded versions of it. It's like godlike faults, and it's quite difficult to show on screen as well. But if they're able to pull off the ego of Sauron and justifying his actions, if they're able to do all of that, they've done really well. Don't just have Sauron be either a big mace wielding giant killing everyone, or a sneaky, sinister guy in a robe. There's dimensions to him, and I'd love it if they managed to do it well, where he interacts with the elves as a representative of Aule, and is so good at portraying himself as being fair and good that the elves are deceived. And to do that, they have to deceive the audience as well, because we could watch it and just be like, how can these elves fall for this? You have to do it right, and it's going to be very difficult. But Sauron is also a favorite character of mine, so I hope they're able to do him justice, but I don't really think they get Sauron, to be honest. the life of I think I said that earlier, it would be Turimbor. I think that would really, really work as an adaptation. And it could be his life. Quite a brutal life, to be honest. And that allows you to do like a full story for this character. No, because you couldn't do like the full life of Morgoth as an adaptation. That would be a 12-hour movie. And I think with something like Turin's story, you can drop right into, the world's already existed and we're following this character. You don't need to do a huge amount of, establishing where you are and all that. It's quite easy to just say this is a tale within Middle Earth. And yeah, it'd be very depressing, but nothing wrong with depressing stuff. There's depressing stories in Tolkien to highlight the hopeful ones. You need to have these moments to appreciate the other ones. Oh, and what battle would I like to see on screen? I don't really mind. Battles. No, I don't have one. I don't have one that stands out. Battles are my favourite part of the text or anything. Tolkien doesn't really go into a lot of detail about them. Maybe seeing not a battle necessarily, but I think it'd be quite interesting if they managed to show the Numenorians humbling Sauron. I'd love to see like this huge arrival of Numenor to Middle Earth and marching to Sauron and his forces abandoning him. And I'd love to see how they pull that one off. That's not really a battle, but it's like a victory anyway. That'd be good. Or maybe the Numenorians helping the elves against Sauron and Sauron having to flee and nearly getting captured. That would be quite interesting. So, I don't know how long I'll keep talking. It's been 2 hours and 20 minutes. I'll try and get through the comments, even though more keep coming, but there's still people watching, so I can stay a little bit longer, even though I have work tomorrow, but I'll try and get through some more questions. Industry sources, Amazon Studios will close down if the show fails to make a profit. I don't know about that because Amazon, like Prime, like Video, I should say, Prime Video and all that, doesn't make a profit. That's Amazon makes an enormous profit, and that subsidizes the video side of things. So they're able to pay for this huge show. But I still think it won't fail. I have to remember that really loud people on the internet don't come anywhere near the masses that have no idea about Tolkien stuff except the Lord of the Rings movies. No, I liked those movies years ago. I'm going to watch this show. All these people they vastly outnumber people arguing online. And I just think this show the IP is too well known. It's just too big to fail. I think I would be very surprised if the show failed. But I also don't know how it would make a profit. The video, like I said, the video doesn't really make a profit. They'd have to get a lot of subscribers, but the way it works is they make money based on people joining Prime. So there's a lot of people who join Prime to watch stuff, but they buy things through Amazon. So they end up making money anyway. And, I'm sure there's someone who joined Prime Video to watch something, and then with the amount of money they've spent on Amazon, they've already covered the membership for 100 potential other members. I have to think of it like that. Amazon is so much bigger than just the studios, and they can afford to subsidize their endeavors with the TV show. But I really, really don't think it will fail. I think it will see it through to the end, and it will probably spawn more stuff afterwards as well. I read that for a second as Princess Diana, because I know it's the anniversary of her death yesterday, I think. Disa, there's something about her, and please don't say it's because she's black. I know somebody will end up saying that. It's nothing to do with that, but there's something about like every bit of promotional material I've seen her in, I just don't like her. Well, I've not seen the episodes yet, and I might end up liking the character, but there's something about like this kind of arrogance and the way she keeps moving her hands and doing these stupid faces and all that. And I've got a feeling, just a feeling going into this show, I'm not going to like this character. But yeah, when I saw that promo with Durin and her terrible accent, I think it's an attempt at a Scottish one. But there's this weird thing with dwarfs where, John Rhys Davies is Welsh, but he kind of sounded a little bit Scottish as Gimli, and it's as if they're kind of imitating that. And I know that the guy playing Durin is Welsh as well, and his accent's kind of fine. I don't mind that. Like, he doesn't sound like he's really, really putting on a voice. He's putting on a little bit, but he's got an accent to do that naturally. I could put on a dwarf voice if I wanted to, and I'm not going to do it here, but I could. But I don't know where she's from. I think, is she maybe English? When I heard her speaking that promo, I was like, what is this? This is kind of Rob Roy accents here, and she sounded terrible, and it just added to this dislike for her character. But I'll give her a shot. I've not seen the show yet, so yeah, that's a terrible accent she was doing. Oops. Can't really answer that. It's not adaptations, even though I really want to answer it. It's a good question. And thank you, Telperion is leaving. You've been here since the beginning. Heading off to meet up family to watch Rings of Power. Yep. Hope you like it. We can probably talk about it tomorrow on the Discord after I've watched it. I hope you enjoy it. A lot of people saying they like the channel, and I'm not highlighting them all on the screen, but thanks a lot to all these really cool comments about the content. I'm glad you're all enjoying it. Nerdrotic. I should watch Nerdrotic. I've seen Nerdrotic videos. I don't get anything from them at all. I think I'm not saying his opinions aren't genuine. Definitely not. I wouldn't say that about him. But Nerdrotic's one of those channels that people... Sounds like I'm taking a piss here. Hold on. I'm so thirsty. There's a lot of channels that were popping up, really negative channels with the content, and that's fine. You don't have to like everything. But what I found really strange about them is that a lot of them had never really covered Tolkien at all, from what I noticed. They never talked about Tolkien. They were never ever mentioning Tolkien. And then when this show came up, suddenly they're all huge Tolkien fans, and everyone keeps telling me. I don't know, like, I think he's called Gary Nerdrotic. I don't know his history with Tolkien at all. He might be a huge fan of Tolkien's writings and that, but from the videos I watched, a lot of the stuff that was quoted was from like Peter Jackson's movies and stuff. And yeah, it's just that suddenly they were huge fans, and this stuff really bothers them. And I just thought if everyone was huge fans, they would have been talking about Tolkien at some point. And Nidrotic is a far, far, far bigger channel than I'll ever hope to be. A lot of people listen to him, and I don't really like those types of videos. But I also don't like the opposite ones. I don't like overbearingly positive videos where it seems like they're incapable of having an opinion of their own for fear of maybe not being invited to premieres or something. But um, I I don't like content where it's just they can be negative, which is fine. But I don't like the reasons. I think this obsession over things being woke and um, it's I'm not really into politics and all that. I find that really boring. And it's the same thing that a lot of the defenders on Twitter were doing, where there's like little quotes that are taken out of context from Tolkien, and um, again, I'm not gonna badmouth his channel or anything like that. It's not content I really enjoy watching. Um, but I'm not into like culture channels or anything anyway. It's uh, just not my thing. So I have watched Nerdrotic. He's certainly good at what he does. He's one of the best at what he does. Huge channel, big following, all that. But I'll be very honest and say the guy's opinion on anything Tolkien that is completely irrelevant to me. I don't really care. I form my own opinions based on what I know about Tolkien, and when I watch something, I wouldn't let someone tell me if I'm betraying Tolkien by liking it or something like that. I'll just form my own opinions on everything. Mm. Just to repeat, yes, this will pop up if someone wants to sit for 3 hours and rewatch it. I'll be heading, not right now, but relatively soon. I've got work in the morning, so I would stay and keep talking. It's actually been pretty good, but unfortunately, I can't stay all night and do it. It's half 11 here. Um, yeah, that's a good point. It's I know that there are a lot of people saying, "Oh, can we only exist in these shows under these circumstances?" That is a good point. Um, I just think um, it's still a missed opportunity for uh, not. I know it's the exploitation of a place like Harad, but I'd love it if they were able to show that not all these figures from the south and the east were uh, evil figures or something like that. But some of them were. But I like this whole mix of worshiping Sauron willingly and being born into worshiping him. I love all that aspect of Morgoth and Sauron's corruption of these places. I still think they'll be shown. Um, so it's not like they're not going to appear. I think, but I think they potentially could handle that well. But who knows? It could be an absolute disaster as well. There's always that chance. Um, Richard Harris, not the famous actor, late to the stream. Given the showmakers don't have access to material other than, is it even the four main books though? That's the thing. I don't even think they've got access to that much. But yes, this isn't a complaint about the show. I just want to get that out of the way. But I don't think it's an adaptation because I think they've got access to certain materials that they are building a story around that will hit certain marks. Like I always repeat, they're going to have rings getting forged. They're going to have the last alliance. They're going to have the downfall of Numenor. All these things will happen, but they can fill all the gaps in with what they want, as long as it doesn't go against Tolkien's main writings, which it won't, because they're filling in gaps that Tolkien didn't write about. That's why they're gaps. So you get a lot of these sneaky people on Twitter that'll say that kind of thing. Well, it can't go against the canon, the dreaded canon. It can't go against the canon. So what are you complaining about? What are you worrying about? And I'm like, you're being a bit kind of deceitful with those comments. It can't go against those points, but everything in between that Tolkien didn't write about, they can do what they want. And that's the stuff that people are worried about and complaining about. So a proper Tolkien adaptation, if you're saying that, no, it can't be, because they don't have the right material to make 5 seasons of a TV show. But if to you an adaptation is main plot points, they're still going to be there, but there's going to be a lot of made up stuff in between, and it just depends how you feel about that. It's that's been obvious ever since they announced it as Second Age. Everyone who's read all the Second Age material is like, well, what are they gonna do? What's everyone going to say? Is a lot of this going to be made up? And of course it is. It has to be. But I'm also not an expert on what they have to use. I know people, I think some people in the comments are saying that they've been given permission to use bits here and there. Again, that's just for main plot points. It's not changing that someone's writing this story out and telling people what to say, because it's not written down anywhere. Brave enough. I don't see why not. Maybe in relation to Anatar, and I don't know, this must be later season stuff or whatever when they're in a Region, but which has these other names that kind of link her to Sauron in a way. They're very similar names, and I don't know if you're meaning them, or are you meaning, or you said, what about her being called Commander? Well, I'm talking about like her other titles. She's got loads of titles. They'll probably use them. I think there's that cheesy moment in one of the trailers where she spouts off loads of made up names and stuff, and then there's the made up character saying his name. But I don't know if they're going to actually call her other things. I don't know if they're allowed to do that. That's another point to make. Yeah, I'm not. I wasn't bad mouthing erotic or anything. It's if people like the content, that's completely fine. If you ever wanted to talk to a lowly small channel like me about Tolkien, I would talk to anyone about Tolkien except a couple of people. Well, a few people. I've got a very small group that I wouldn't talk to Tolkien about. But yeah, it's people can like whatever content they want. I'll never tell them not to go and watch Nerdrotic. But yeah, I've not really kept up in videos about Rings of Power and all the controversies and all that stuff. I've not really bothered with all that stuff. And I know it's been a huge deal over the last 9 months or something like that. A lot of channels have got really big doing it. But I'd honestly just rather wait and see the show and see what I think about it. You're the best judge of your own taste, aren't you? Don't let someone else tell you to like or dislike something, just watch the show. And even if it's terrible in terms of, being related to Tolkien, you might like the show. And there's nothing wrong with that. You're not less of a fan or any nonsense like that. So see this. Yeah, the Balrog appeared at the end of the trailer, didn't he? And I don't know, because obviously we got the Balrog for waking up and killing Durin. Surely it's not that happening so soon, but maybe. But and then I thought, is it some flashback to something else, or is a Balrog going to pop up to fight one of the characters or something? I have no idea what they're doing. This is another thing they're maybe making up, but I'd maybe guess it was the one waking up in Khazad-dûm. It looks slightly different though, but again, this is a different show. It's not Peter Jackson's movies, so but the Balrog looks close enough, like they based the design off it. It's quite a strange one, but it's entirely possible it's Durin's Bane, or another Balrog or something. I don't know what they're doing with it, but again, I would have liked to have seen their own design for the Balrog, but a lot of people are like, it has to look this way because Peter Jackson said so. We'll see what they do, but I hope it's not like Galadriel fighting the Balrog or something like that. Swatting. No, I think in general the Tolkien channels all seem to get on. Doesn't mean I like all of the channels, but do get on with most of them. And I think people just got on with their own content, and some of them really support other channels and some of them just do their own thing. I don't think it would get that bad at all, but I think for the foreseeable future, most of them will be doing this upcoming show. So and I'll maybe wrap up in the next 5 minutes. I've reached the end of the comments. There's one that I'm about to just answer there. So it's a good time to just say wrap up with any last questions, and I'll finish in about 1:45 and get to my bed before I fall asleep. Yes, I think Alex has asked this about 10 times. I should have just answered the first time and said, no, I haven't seen it. I would like to, I think, did you try and send a link and it didn't? I don't know if links work in the chat for other people. It might just be mods, but I'll definitely go and check it out. It's a rock opera, it's Russian, and it's Finrod. What's not to like? Yeah, and this is a strange one as well. It's always this competition, and it's, wouldn't you rather just like both shows? Like, if both shows were good and you enjoyed them, isn't it great that you're getting to watch these two shows at the one time instead of having to wait years for one and years for another? I've not watched House of the Dragon yet. I tend to like to binge shows. I was going to binge Rings of Power, but it's going to be impossible because people are going to be talking about it on Discord, on YouTube, on Twitter, and all that, and it'll all get ruined anyway. I need to just watch the episodes as they come, or it'll all get spoiled. I don't really mind House of the Dragon getting spoiled so much because I don't really know anything about it. But I want to wait till that season's done and I'll watch all of that. But all this, like you say, pit them against each other, I don't get that at all, to be honest. And just, slow down, no more comments coming in. Maybe take a couple more questions if they're there, and then I'll be off. But yeah, it's been pretty good. 2 hours 40. I was worried that after like 40 minutes, no one would be saying anything. I'd have to just stop. But it's been pretty good, and I was happy to talk about this subject that I never talk about. There's a lot of good questions. I didn't get through all of them, or I'd still be about 40 minutes behind probably. But yeah, I'd also like to know, because I'm wanting to do more live streams. I'd love to know, maybe when I get this video up publicly and you can leave comments, I'd maybe like to know what you'd like to see in future streams. This was about adaptations, but any other topics in particular you want to do, or just general Q&A stuff, you can let me know. Oh yeah, and just before I answer those last questions, I've not plugged Patreon at all, but yeah, there's a few of us that talk on Discord, and you can join that. It's only, like Oliver says here, you can join I say lowest tier like it's something bad, but there's a tier that's only £1, and you can come into the Discord and we talk about Tolkien all the time and loads of other stuff. So you can do that, and yeah, some really cool people there, and it's only £1. Why not? I'm always looking for more Patreon members, and they seem to provide really cool ideas for videos, and yeah, it's quite active for having such a small group in there. So if that sounds interesting, you can check out the Patreon page, patreon.com/theredbook. So I want to answer just the last few questions and then I'll be off. Richard again. No, I wouldn't like Richard. I wouldn't like Peter Jackson to be more involved in the show to bring continuity and experience, because, as I've said earlier in the stream, even though I like Peter Jackson's movies and everything, I don't want every single thing about Middle Earth to be his vision of it, how he views it. I'd love to see how it's a bit like when you look at artwork for Tolkien. Imagine all artwork was just John Howe. Now imagine every single thing you saw was John Howe, and then anytime anyone else painted or drew a Tolkien character, you were like, well, that doesn't look like the way John Howe drew it. It'd be terrible. I'm not saying anything about John Howe's artwork. I'm just saying I'm glad that he's not the only artist. There's so many different visions out there, and it's the exact same for adaptations. I'd like something new. The Peter Jackson 3 movies were great. A lot of stuff was right about them. A lot of stuff I didn't like. Well, not a lot. Some stuff I didn't like. It's just, it doesn't have to be him all the time. So I don't mind that they make choices that are different. But I will say the short-haired elves thing isn't really working for me so far. I didn't ignore it. I didn't see that earlier. Sorry. Any love for the old Hobbit? I've only seen the old Hobbit cartoon twice, I think. The ugliest dwarves ever put on film. I quite like that one, though. I think that's surprisingly faithful kind of adaptation of it. And I think that's a good film. So I'll say, I would recommend it. It's a nice movie. And even though the dwarves are horrendously ugly to look at, and it's not the nicest looking film, it's it wasn't really expensive animation or anything like that. But I think it's worth a watch, and it doesn't get talked about enough. And before I start getting into it, there's a couple more questions to come in, but unfortunately I'll end up in here till after midnight if I answer them. So apologies for not getting to the final questions, but I think that's us. And like I said, when I put this live up for everyone to just watch, I'd really appreciate it if people would let me know for future live streams what they'd like me to cover. If they want to do a topic or like this, or just an open live stream where I can interact with people once a month or something like that. But I want to really thank everyone who's been here the whole time or just dropped in and dropped out. There's been a good kind of number of people throughout this whole thing, so I'm always surprised people want to sit and listen to me talk about Tolkien. And I really enjoyed doing this. It was good to talk about adaptations for once. And yeah, it's just didn't go as bad as I thought. I thought there'd be loads of controversy and fights in the comments and all that, and it didn't happen. So I hope people enjoyed it. And just for what's coming up in the channel, I'm currently working on a video about Durin the Deathless, this whole reincarnation of dwarves, if it was true or just a belief and all that kind of thing. So that should come up the next week or so or whatever. And yeah, thanks to everyone again. I enjoyed this, and I'll talk to you all in the comments or the next stream. So I hope you enjoyed it, and it's good night from me.